Hello, everyone. This is Michelle Sullivan. I am so excited about this journey that I am embarking on with you here in this YouTube platform. I really wanted to create this. Um, I wanted to create a area, a place where folks could talk about what they have experienced with Hurricane Helene. And we are coming upon the 1 year anniversary of this natural disaster that hit Western North Carolina. And even though it's been a year, there we're still dealing with it emotionally, um, environmentally, business wise. It's been a really challenging year for the folks that live in the area of Western North Carolina. I wanted to start a storytelling project that would give folks an opportunity to talk about the things that they have experienced because I believe that our stories are healing and there's something about being able to talk about when you've gone through a natural disaster that can be really helpful and just saying I'm still here. Um, and it's been hard, but this is what happened to me and this is my story. So I wanted to, before we even get, I introduce you to the individuals that I have interviewed and they get to tell their stories. I wanted to talk with you about the phases of traumatic stress reactions following disaster events. It is, the impact is there's nothing like it. And not knowing what to do and going through it all is just, I don't know that there is a way you can fully prepare yourself. But I just thought it would be important to kind of start here, at kind of at the beginning of what are the stress reactions. So this information actually is public information that comes from the Natural National Center for PTSD, but and these these are the things that we experienced and are still experiencing after 1 year of Hurricane Helene. So I just wanted to share these with you. In order of kind of like laying the foundation for this storytelling project. Many people can experience uh, this event, and many more witness or indirectly are affected by the disaster. And it's common for people to react with behavioral stresses, emotional stresses, and just even readjusting to the problems that are going on. And so it's almost like there's a cycle or more of a roller coaster ride with these events. And the first one that we experience is impact. Impact is, or even before the storm, um, there are things, maybe hours, days, or weeks before the event happens. What was going on? What were you doing? The And it encompasses all of the hours and the days that led up to the disaster, depending on the size and the scope of the event. And the impact tends to be longer for events that destroy people's homes and create a housing crisis, like what we experienced here in Western North Carolina. And so several stressors can occur during impact. and they can include threat to life, encounters with injury and death, loss of loved ones, loss of a home, a workplace, your possessions, even dislocation, being separated from your loved ones, and grappling with disasters. We may experience worry or confusion and about family members and friends who might have been involved in the disaster, and that can amplify the distress. And then chaos, disruptions to communication, even confusion about the true scope and nature of the event, which I can say really was true for me because everyone who was not in the mountains of Western North Carolina that had news, my family, my loved ones, already knew what had happened, even though we were in the middle of it and didn't really fully comprehend how bad it was here in the area. People, our loved ones already knew the true scope and nature of the event. So during the impact phase, affected individuals and communities, they experience a sense of threat, shock, fear, helplessness, or even powerlessness. They might even experience guilt or anxiety, and some people respond in a way that is disorganized and stunned, which can extend the post-disaster period, Um, it can be manifested by standing in harm's way or wandering aimlessly, seemingly out of touch with surroundings. And I can really say, I think that stunned feeling with the impact of what's happened. And during this phase, people often reach out in connected efforts to support each other and prevent loss of life and property. In our particular situation with flooding and landslides, tornadoes, trees falling on homes, it really began, I know, especially for me, it started in our neighborhood and in our community that that the work began as soon as the storm passed over. So there was a coming together. There can be a coming together where people are, coming out to support each other and prevent loss of life and loss of property. And most people, they react to protect their own lives and the lives of others, and um, so there's that impact. And then the next phase of this is the phase of immediate rescue. So in this phase, in the days and weeks following a natural disaster event, there is a reckoning of what has happened. And during this phase, people are beginning to assess the extent of damage to their homes and communities. They may be trying to locate survivors while still reeling from the shock of what just happened. And at this time, they're only beginning to process the process of dealing with the physical, emotional, and social impacts of injury and loss and exposure to traumatic stress engineered by the event. And the focus is often on survival needs and the restoration of safety and some semblance of order. And while people are trying to get their lives in order, there may be a delay in emotional reactions, which may, only appear after a certain level of stability has been achieved. Some of the reactions in the immediate phase are expected to be changeable and usually dependent on the individual's history and their perceptions and exposure to the disaster. But a full range of negative, emotional, mental, social, and physical reactions may occur. And they may not be long-term outcomes, but some of the reactions that are experienced in losses like what we experienced are numbness, denial or shock, confusion, feeling stunned or overwhelmed, anxiety, grief, reactions to loss, flashbacks and nightmares, anger and despair, sadness, hopelessness. And there's also positive reactions that are in these dimensions as well. And I think sometimes that can really come through like the inspiration to help others and to rebuild and find, for relief and gratitude. And so that is phase two. In phase three, there is the intermediate and recovery stage. The intermediate phase may last from a few weeks to a few months, depending on the size and scope of the event. And this phase is the prolonged period of adjustment or a return to equilibrium, like a return back to normal. It begins as rescue is completed and individuals and communities face returning to routine tasks and roles before the event. Much of what happens in this phase will depend on the extent of the devastation that has occurred, as well as injuries, exposure to traumatic events, and lives lost. This is sometimes called the honeymoon stage of the event. And during the impact and immediate phases of response, most people's priority is basic safety and survival. But once that need is secured and the intermediate phase begins, other needs may emerge that may have previously been frustrated or unfulfilled. So there are ongoing problems that are common in this phase and they complicate the recovery. So there are some subphases that can be described. The first one that I want to share with you is altruism. So there's been an outpouring of support. There is an outpouring of support, services, and supplies. People may feel grateful and inspired by the altruism of others and relieved to receive the support. There's a heightened sense of solidarity among survivors that can transcend the conflicts and the problems within the community. And this has been identified, as I said before, like the honeymoon phase of a post-disaster event. And people, they may be hesitant to express distress and concern or dissatisfaction, but they feel they would be grateful. They feel they should be grateful for the aid given and because they have suffered less than others have. And I will say, I heard that so much in just all around here in the mountains. Folks would say, "Oh, I can't take that because there are folks who are worse off than me. Give it, you can give it to them." And they, yeah, that is, I heard that very, very often in this time of recovery. The other thing that can be experienced throughout this time is disillusionment. So, in this period, which usually follows the honeymoon phase, there may be disappointment in the disaster response, and hopeful expectations may give way to resentment. The disillusionment can also occur when outside relief workers leave and affected individuals realize that they're on their own, with a lot of work left to be done. And this aspect of the recovery process has been called the second disaster because it presents new problems of loss, conflict, and potential trauma. And exist and tensions existing prior to the event can reemerge and even be stronger than before, particularly in marginalized communities where they are perceived to be the least helped. So the needs may be intense in their intermediate phase, particularly for those who've been severely affected. reactions that were prevalent in the immediate phase will carry over into this disillusionment phase. And physical symptoms such as sleep disturbance, indigestion, and fatigue may also emerge. And stress reactions can also express themselves socially in relationship and work difficulties. And so this period of intermediate and recovery is where we have been in the mountains of Western North Carolina for the past 6 months. And with us coming upon this 1 year anniversary, the last of the phases is the long term and reconstruction phase. And this phase may last several months or years as communities rebuild and individuals deal with their post event problems. On the one hand, there may be opportunities for positive social communities of coming together to come together collectively to respond and rebuild. But if the community is unable to pull together and overcome the brokenness, there may be an increased risk of ongoing stress and reactions across communities. And the ongoing daily impact from the disaster may be complicated by socioeconomic, cultural, racial, or political factors associated with the disaster response. And concerns for the future and what it might hold can result in fear and resentment and depression. The percentage of the perception of the event and the meaning assigned to it may also affect long-term mental adjustment. So ongoing media coverage of the disaster event it could create negative reactions for those who view it, particularly those close to the event. So as the needs of individuals and communities change over time following a disaster event, response efforts um, can come from, outside of the community, within the community, and and the phases of disaster reaction here that I wanted to share with you is to highlight um, the need for greater awareness and response to the mental and physical, emotional things that we experience after a disaster event. And so this timeline, and this is taken from the veterans it is a website, PTSD, the National Center for PTSD, but this is a timeline. I will never forget that this was explained to me by a chaplain as I was standing in line to get food one day at a Rocky's Hot Chicken Shack just right down the road from me in my community. And I'm standing in line. This is like early days after the event. And I was talking with a chaplain who was there with a volunteer group. And we had some incredible nonprofit organizations that showed up to help us here in the mountains of Western North Carolina. And I told her about the work that I do as a life and grief coach, and as a grief educator. And she said, Michelle, I want to explain something to you because you need to know and understand the phases of this traumatic stress because you're going to see it in your community. You're going to see it with the people that you work with, that you play with, people that you worship with, people that you do life with, even your neighbors. This is going to be something that is really important that you're going to need to pay attention to. And I am so glad that she took the time to explain this to me because I had never been through anything. I've been through hurricanes, I've been through tornadoes, um, but nothing quite like what we experienced with Hurricane Helene. And I have stories that I can share. Others have stories that they can share, which is part of the reason why I wanted to do this storytelling project because we are still healing from what's happened. And there are losses that will never have some of these things back again. And I wanted people to have an opportunity to tell their story. So this is the reason why I started Helene 1 year later, Stories of Loss and Overcoming, because I wanted to introduce you to individuals that want to tell their story and how the storm affected them before, during, and after. So I invite you to come along and check out the interviews that are on this YouTube channel. And yeah, hold space for these folks, but then also it may be something that you can relate to in one way or another. But one thing I know for sure is that our stories matter. Everyone's story matters. And I wanted to create a safe space for folks to tell their stories. So come join me. Thank you for your interest. And if you also would like for me to interview you so that you can tell your story, you can reach out to me at theclarityjourney@gmail.com. And I would be honored to be able to hold space for you and allow you to share your story. Thank you for watching, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your comments as you watch the interviews. Thank you so much.